here. Call this meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by an invocation by Ted Martin. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, please join me. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for another beautiful day in the Ozarks. Father, we just pause for just a second to truly give thanks in this week of Thanksgiving, that we do it not just today and not just Thursday, but every day. Through all the craziness, all the world factors, everything that's affecting our community, there's still plenty to give thanks for every day. Father, we invite you in these chambers tonight as decisions are made. We lift this agenda to you. Father, we lift up employees that are recognized. Kyle Laughlin, for example, one of 250 great employees that work here and serve every day. Father, we love you. Praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Ted.
Oh, I got to go to the other agenda, don't we?
Madam Clerk, will you please call roll?
Denham. Here. Gaines.
Here.
Cooper.
Here.
Milton.
Here.
Fenton.
Here.
Whitus.
Here.
C. Your Honor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Alderman Fenton, would you please present Kyle Laughlin of the United States Department as the employee of the Utilities Department? I forgot my glasses. These are temps. As the Employee of the Month for November 2021. Thank you.
It is my privilege to announce that the City of Branson's Service and Excellent Employee of the Month Award for November 2021 is going to Utilities Maintenance Worker Kyle Laughlin. This award is to recognize employees who have gone above and beyond and whose performance exemplifies the City of Branson values. Kyle is receiving this award because of his exceptional accountability, integrity, and willingness to be a team player with a positive attitude. Kyle has shown an outstanding ability to fill in where he is needed and is always the first one to tackle any issue head-on. On behalf of the Mayor, Board of Aldermen, City Administrator, and City staff, it is my honor to announce Kyle Laughlin as the City of Branson's November 2021 Service and Excellence Employee of the Month. Congratulations and keep up the good work. Kyle, I have to apologize because they threw me under the bus this month. My understanding is you normally get a nice plaque, and apparently that's messed up right now. So I get to give you a piece of paper, but congratulations.
Actually, Kyle, the official word is, and I quote, "Our plaque-making thing is broke." And as soon as the plaque-making thing gets fixed, that will be replaced with a plaque. Unquote.
He was really good.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Kyle. This is the public comment section of the Board of Aldermen meeting. At this time, the board will hear citizens who have signed up in the order they are listed. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers?
Yes, Your Honor. Doug Clark, 121A, St. Andrews Street, speaking on COVID shots for 5 to 11-year-olds and down and 2-month-old infants.
And Doug, just as a reminder, things that this board has some control over.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, you have a lot of founders that had a lot of things to say about what your obligation is to be eternally vigilant, regardless of what position you are, whether you're a citizen or employee of some governmental official. So that's what my job is here, is to bring information that you probably aren't going to hear anywhere else, that I know for a fact the majority of it's true. First of all, we have a statement by John Witherspoon, who's a founder, and he said, anybody that's an enemy of God is an enemy of our country. Okay, and that was in the context of the revolution and what it was about. And if you read some of the original writings, you find out that there's a lot of them that had the same sympathies. But a lot of our laws are based on the Bible. There are two here that are appropriate to what we're talking about, especially with the COVID shots and the directions that we've been going. There is a USC code and a United States code called misprision of treason. It's USC 2382. And what that is if you are aware that somebody committed treason and you were an enemy of your country and you knew that they were doing something that was violating that particular purview as of law, then you would be as guilty as the person committing the felony or the crime. There's a penalty for that. It's actually more of a penalty than the treason penalty. So in this particular case here, you have to let a judge or somebody in authority in the prosecutorial area of the law or bring it to people's attention so that you don't get struck down by the penalty for that. Treason is a little different. It's where you're actually undermining your government by furnishing the enemy information or technology or whatever we have. In the midst of all of this COVID stuff, we have a lot of people in our universities that were passing on information on how to create a bioweapon using the coronavirus as the base of it. There isn't any doubt about it. You go in and look at the abstracts from the University of North Carolina, And then you look at Mr. Lieber from Harvard that got arrested on January the 20th of last year. He has not come to trial yet, but it was furnishing the information and running it through the Hunan lab over there. Now, my concern about this is that we've been promoting these vaccines, and they know that this stuff is a bioweapon. There's different degrees of things that are in these shots. Some of them are not as damaging as others, but there are some that are really bad to certain age groups. And the ones that are having the most trouble right now are the 15-year-olds or 12-year-olds to 18-year-olds. You have myocarditis, the inflammation around the heart. You have pericarditis. You have blood clots, micro blood clots, and this is what physicians that are in the cardiology area are telling everybody that will listen. And unfortunately, our friendly lying media that we have on the main ones are not covering any of this stuff. And I don't know how these people can sleep at night and look themselves in the mirror full well knowing that they're being paid to put this narrative out on every station. It's exactly the same narrative. And something, any logical person that listened to this stuff would have to say something is wrong with this. And we've ruined our economy. We have injected a lot of people with a lot of things that are very dangerous. Now, one thing the Bible says about this, and this is where the treason and misprision treason laws is a watchman on the wall. It was a pretty big penalty if you were watching over your village and you didn't report somebody that was coming in to murder everybody for whatever reason, then you were going to be put to death also. So that's kind of what enforces that. Now, the latest thing here, there's been about 2,800 children's deaths. And these are the ones that's been reported to VAERS. And this is the babies. They have dead babies in VAERS as another study, and this is because the mothers took this vaccine. Okay? Now, if you have ever looked at a vaccine insert, you go down through it, and there's a section where it says they don't recommend giving it to a pregnant woman, flu shots or any of this stuff.
Time. I'm sorry, 30 seconds.
So, I mean, there's enough stuff here that would make your hair curl up if you had access to and read this stuff and be, you probably should be telling your county sheriff if they try to come in here and enforce vaccine on these kids that they shouldn't let these people come in with military or whatever they plan on doing, because that's what's going on in Australia, New Zealand, England, Austria. It's like
Time.
a war zone over there.
Doug, I didn't want to interrupt you while you were talking.
Okay.
When I changed the decorum rules, what I was attempting to do was to respect everybody's time and trying to limit the amount of time that we're all here. So, a question, with what you just shared, and it's valuable information, but I'm not sure, when you communicate to this board, what is it that, when you communicate that, what is it that you're asking this board to do?
Here's the way the misprision law works. If you see something wrong that's evil, you're to report it to some person of authority, a judge or a sheriff or whoever's in the prosecutorial area of your area. And it doesn't matter if I'm telling you, then you know the information. And I can prove what I'm saying is true, then you have an obligation, because you know it, to follow up on it and figure out, I can tell you it's true, but you're not going to know it unless you sit down with me and I show you the minutia of a pile of stuff that I have that can prove this to you. And then once you know, then you have the same obligation on those types of laws that you do when you didn't know it. Once you know it, then that's the bottom line. It's your responsibility as a watchman or something to be fully informed. I don't think anybody was fully informed on this whole thing from the very beginning, because if they did, there would have been more outcry on this from the very beginning if they'd listened to some of the people that were really trying to warn everybody about this, So we could have a real disaster with kids from 11 down to 5 with heart trouble and blood clots, because that's what the cardiologists are seeing now. That's primarily the biggest surge of damage that you're seeing. So if you want to sacrifice your child to Moloch, you're sacrificing your child by letting him go get a vaccine that they can't prove to you that it's safe. That's just all there is to it. And they can't do it because they haven't done the test. And the only reason they haven't done the test and let you know is because every practical animal they had early on 10 years ago died in the test using this vaccine. And they've had some since then, not to the extent, but they publish everything in the CDC. They publish it in the VAERS. All you got to do if you want to look at minutia all day like I do, you'll see it. And then you should be alarmed. I mean, that's my problem. I've been talking to, some of the people in the state about this, and they're just as, kind of dense, let's say. But they've got whatever they're doing, it's not a pertinent thing that they want to know. The best traction I got was Ashcroft last Tuesday. He actually listened for about 30 minutes, and I had the documents there and showed him, and I said, well, he said the same thing. He says, well, what can I do? I'm the Secretary of the State. That's not my purview. But now that he knows, I said, now that you know, you have an obligation to do something with this information. And it really, it's either there or it isn't. So he needs to do that. And you talk to the Attorney General, and I talked to, 20-some state legislatures about this. And because there's this big flow of money to support this, it's $1,000 a minute they're going into each one of these vaccine manufacturers. They're making money off this hand and foot. And what has it done to everybody else? What's it done to the coffers of Branson? What's it done to the business owners? That's a national security issue as far as I'm concerned. And that's a treason issue right there. If they deliberately did this, which I'm convinced they did, then they need to be charged. And some of them probably need to be done away with, like they did in Nuremberg. It's the same thing.
Okay, thank you very much, Doug.
Yeah. I won't bother you till I hear from the Attorney General. How's that?
Thanks, Doug.
Our next speaker is Cherry Webster, 118 Country Bluff Drive, Branson. She's speaking on Bill number 5840.
Good evening. Tonight, I would first like to provide an update on the Missouri Housing Development Commission public hearing held last Friday night. There were 4 low-income housing project applications from the city of Branson. There was the Dan Ruda project with Tammy Creason, Bluffview Apartments off Gretna Road, for which the city awarded a resolution of support for affordable housing at the 9/14/21 Aldermen meeting. At that meeting, I asked the board to consider the track record of the developer. None of you did, and all of you voted for the resolution. However, the MHDC does consider past performance. In fact, their application guidelines specify on page 28 that 0 to 25 points are awarded based on a development team's prior performance with the MHDC for the past 5 years. It applies to all developers and co-developers, general contractors, agents, syndicators. I spoke at the MHDC public hearing not to complain, but to document the landowner's prior performance at 3855 Fall Creek Road, originally called Fountains on Fall Creek, which then became Fall Creek Townhomes, for 2019 and 2020 with the MHDC. I also spoke on the project that was relocated to Golfview Drive due to the destruction of the 40-acre forest on the original site before the HUD environmental assessment could be conducted. The original project did not receive any funding last year because their score wasn't high enough. This year, the Ruda Creason development team didn't even apply for MHD funding for that original site. Alderman Skanes, you also spoke at the hearing on behalf of Bluffview Apartments and the other 3 projects, Branson Manor Apartments on Old Country Road, Oak Tree Trails on Nyhart, Mountain Terrace on Frank Reed Boulevard. You commented on how the city needs 800 to 900 low-income housing units.
Yes, I did.
That will take anything. Does that anything mean financing, no matter what the developer's track record is?
I disagree with your premise.
I don't recall seeing any resolutions of support for the other 3 projects. Did they not ask for letters of support? Were they not offered support? Did the city know about the projects before the MHDC applications were submitted? Was the city just concerned about Ruda's project getting formal support? The reason I ask is because on page 21 of the MHDC application guidelines, there are what is called threshold documents, which must be submitted with each application. One of those documents is local jurisdiction contact verification. This requires evidence of officials having been contacted, one of which includes the chief executive of the local jurisdiction. That would be City Administrator Dobbins. The City of Branson may not care about a developer's track record, but the MHDC certainly does, and it even scores each application based on the past 5 years' performance. Second, I would like to ask the status of Bill 5840, the rezoning of 3855 Fall Creek Road by way of annexation plan of intent in the summer of 2020. At the last Alderman meeting, the board adjourned to executive session to discuss litigation. I understand you can't divulge what occurred during that session. I can only assume there was discussion regarding that particular zoning. I ask tonight, what is this board going to do now? Are you going to double down and hide with Attorney Hvac behind his favorite state statute, 610.021.1 and 610.010.6? If you disclose the lack of valid justification for violating city ordinance, state statute, and state case law, are you then providing a cause of legal action against yourselves and the city? Is the board still waiting for some legal action before it decides to correct this mistake? Are you still trying to decide which is worse, legal action from Country Bluff or legal action from the developer's attorneys? Or are you going to step up, acknowledge the rezoning violated 3 laws, take action to correct it, and rescind Bill 5840? The rescission and the parcel's reversion to agriculture is overdue.
30 seconds.
If the current or the new landowner want to apply for zoning using the city's legal zoning process, that's their choice. Either way, the zoning circumvented the P&Z process and Ordinance 2020-84 needs to be rescinded. How is this correction going to take place? Certainly, there will need to be an agenda item and a vote. How will the vote go? Mayor Milton will vote the same way he voted in 2020 if he needs to break a tie. Alderman Denham and Cooper ran on the transparency platform, so
Time.
they'll probably vote for following the law. Alderman Fenton may be an unknown. He wasn't a party to the violations last year, but he's an attorney, so he's going to be held to a higher standard. How is he going to vote? That leaves Alderman Skanes, Whitus, and C., who took Attorney Hvac's advice that, quote, there is no legal requirement that zoning has to go through the Planning Commission, end quote. Will the 3 of you be stepping up and fixing this problem, or will you be doubling down and hiding behind legal cause and closed record statutes? Mr. Mayor, are you or your alderman able at this time to comment on what the city is going to do now?
Stan, do you have any comments?
I have no comment, no, sir.
Any alderman have any comments?
I just want to clarify something, Mayor. I got on that telephone call the other night to support all of the projects in Branson and as well as in Hollister, and there were some senior projects in that area. I think HCW had one, and they're sort of rehabbing some senior projects, which we significantly need in this community. We stated that as a board, and I didn't single any one of them out. I just said, you know, we need help. And according to KY3, we have one of the greatest demands in the entire state in Cheney County, and we have to be able to address it, and that's how I came across.
Thank you, Alderman Skanes.
I agree with that. He supported all of them.
Thank you. Alderman Denham?
Yes, thank you. I definitely agree that the city of Branson does need low-income housing. It is a huge need in this area, and I agree, but I also agree that it needs to be done correctly, properly. And we have been hearing about the zoning of that property for many meetings. There's legitimate concerns. I feel there are legitimate concerns. How I personally feel is not being concerned about a lawsuit. What I personally feel is that this city is making decisions based on our municipal code, based on the Missouri Revised Statutes, and with a focus on case law. If case law exists, it's there for a reason. My question is, what would the process be to rescind the ordinance and take care of this, do it correctly, so we do not have to continue visiting this? Because we will continue visiting this until, we're being asked to make a decision. So my question is, what is the process to rescind this ordinance and go through the proper process that I feel that the city should go through? It's my opinion, and just would like to know what the process is.
Well, I know this has been going on for a long time, and I've had many meetings at Country Bluff, many meetings here, some meetings in executive. Our attorney has advised us to not share any information from executive. So what's the feeling of the board? Is this something we want to maybe put to rest, put on an agenda item, or a study session? Because I'm hearing Cherry's question, and I think it's,
How about an agenda item for a vote?
because I know you've asked this question several times, and I know you have not been given a response.
Right? It's not like we're asking for what goes on behind closed sessions. We're asking for, why did the city decide to vote for a zoning through an annexation plan of intent when they clearly violated city ordinance, state statute, and case law? And it's looking like you don't have a valid justification. That's why everybody's silent. And if you were to explain your actions, it'd be ammunition for a lawsuit. And so you guys ought to be feeling like you're in the hot seat.
I do.
Not you.
No, I do.
Because you said last summer, this was circumventing the P&Z process, and you weren't going to take the heat on it. And so you voted properly. You voted to follow the legal process. But there are 3 other aldermen up there that did not. I think you got bad advice from your director of planning and your city attorney. And I think that the city should be following the law. If you're not going to follow the law and you're going to vote against the law and violate it, you have no business being an alderman. Time to poop or get off the pot. Do something.
Well,
Either just say, we're not going to rescind this, we're going to double down. And if we violated the law, we violated the law, prove us differently. Or do what's right and just and go through the legal process as it's iterated in city ordinance, state statute, and case law. I don't think that's an unreasonable request.
Cherry, I agree with you. I think that, I don't think we should keep ignoring your question or your request. So, City Administrator Dobbins, I would like to have this as an agenda item. At the next available meeting. I know we only have one meeting, right, between now and the end of the year? I'm not sure. 14th of December. And that's the last meeting, yeah. So I'm not sure how full that's going to be. They tend to be full. But I'd like to have this on the next available agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cherry.
Mr. Mayor, I think that it was, just in fairness here, because I totally disagree with her, but that if Dan wanted to rebuke anything, that he be given an opportunity, because he has been trash from one end of this town to the other on this process. And things that I heard in that meeting the other night were just not good, just not good. And if Dan wanted to, I think we need to give him a chance, and I think that he needs to be given a
I take
chance.
exception to that.
No,
What
I sit there in the
what I
meeting and I listen
What
to
I
it.
stated at the public hearing was documentation of the developer's behavior.
You trashed Dan Ruda from
I
one end to
documented
the
his
other.
behavior, albeit bad behavior, but it was his behavior.
Mr. Mayor, thank you.
I think Dan needs to be given a chance to respond. If he doesn't, he doesn't.
Dan, be more than happy to listen if you have any comments you'd like to make.
I think therein
Didn't
lies
need you
the
at the-
problem. They need to go to marriage counseling.
Didn't need you at the mic for that comment. Thank you, Dan. Madam Clerk, and if we have any other public speakers other than Dan?
We have no other speakers.
Thank you. Next is the consent agenda. Are there any items that any member of the audience would like to have moved down from the consent agenda to ask additional questions or comments? Any items the board would like to move down? Madam Clerk, would you please read the items on the consent agenda?
Your Honor, the items on the consent agenda are as follows. Approval of the Board of Aldermen minutes for the November 9th, 2021 regular meeting. Final reading of Bill Number 6068, an ordinance amending the 2021 budget to adjust monies and various funds for capital expenditures. Final reading of Bill Number 6070, an ordinance amending the 2021 budget to adjust monies in the general fund to record expenditures related to a grant received from the Missouri Secretary of State for a new module in the Laserfish software. Final reading of Bill Number 6074, an ordinance approving the renewal of the contract with Sumner One for managed print services and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 6075, an ordinance approving the renewal of the contract with ThinkSpace IT for Microsoft software licensing and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 6076, an ordinance approving the renewal of the contract with DASI Integrations for information technology managed network and security services and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 6077, an ordinance approving a contract with CDW Government for the purchase of computer hardware and software and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 6078, an ordinance accepting the proposal of CDW Government for the purchase of a network security appliance and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 6079, an ordinance approving the renewal of the contract with Bills Electric Incorporated for electrical maintenance and repair services and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 6080, an ordinance approving the renewal of the contract with DH Pace Company Incorporated, DBA Overhead Door Company of Springfield for overhead door maintenance and repair services and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 6081, an ordinance accepting the proposal of American Rock and Concrete LLC, DBA Tri-Lakes Ready Mix for concrete supplies and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 6082, an ordinance amending Article 2, Division 2 of the Branson Municipal Code pertaining to regular meetings and agendas. Final reading of Bill Number 6083, an ordinance approving the renewal of the contract with Capital Solutions Consulting for professional lobbying services and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 6084, an ordinance accepting proposal of Site 1 landscape supply for agricultural supplies and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 6085, an ordinance amending a site lease agreement with T-Mobile Central LLC to locate cellular communications equipment on Landmark Water Tower and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 6086, an ordinance approving the contract with CenturyLink for voice access services and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 6087, an ordinance approving the contract with American Fidelity for supplemental insurance, Section 128 FSA and HSA administration for city employees and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 6088, an ordinance approving the contract with Anthem for medical insurance for City of Branson employees and elected officials and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 6089, an ordinance approving the City of Branson's employer and employee costs for 2022 medical, dental, and life insurance coverages and the city's contributions to employee health savings accounts. Final reading of Bill Number 6090, an ordinance approving the contract with Anthem for life insurance for City of Branson employees and elected officials and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 6091, an ordinance approving the contract with Delta Dental for for dental insurance for City of Branson employees and elected officials and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill number 6092, an ordinance approving the contract with Delta Vision for vision insurance for City of Branson employees and elected officials and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Your Honor, that concludes the reading consent agenda. The floor is open for a motion approving all items on the consent agenda.
Do you need a
My
drink of
good-
water?
My goodness, that was a busy meeting. I'm looking for a motion and a second. We have a motion and a second. Anyone wishing to speak on this matter? Any board members wishing to speak? Hearing none, let's vote.
Your Honor, that passed 5-0.
Thank you.
Your Honor, the next item is first read of Bill number 6094, an ordinance approving the addendum with Empire Energy LLC for fuel and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill number 6094.
We have a motion and a second. Keith, looking ahead, do you need a chair? You've got several items up here.
I got a couple.
You have a couple? Now I'll get a staff report from Keith.
Mayor, members of the board, I'm going to do the next 7 here. I'm going to summarize each one, but if you need more information, just feel free to stop me. This, bill number 6094 is to amend our fuel budget for this year to get us through the end of the year in the amount of $75,000, which will bring our total not to exceed to $351,250. Prices have continued to go up, and every time we get an invoice, it seems prices go up a little bit. We've paid from 99 cents to $2.01 in 2020 for an average of $1.59 and $1.80 for unleaded and diesel. 2021 ranged from $2.06 to $3.09 for unleaded and $2.12 to $3.16 for diesel. So prices have continually went up on us. So I'd be glad to answer any questions, and I recommend approval of this.
Any comments from anybody in the audience? Any questions or comments from the board?
And also, I believe we're asking for a double read on this one.
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct. So we can get an invoice paid.
Yeah, let's take a vote on this.
That motion carried 5-0.
So I'm looking for a motion for a double read.
Yes, that's correct.
Your Honor, I move to read Bill number 6094 for its final reading due to time restraints, I guess. Get the invoice paid.
Get a motion and second. Motion and a second.
Can we fix, just a second?
Ruth made the motion.
We have a motion and a second.
Is that okay with everybody? Because
Yeah, it should be the
Cooper
same
read
person.
it, so I just,
Yeah. Any questions, comments from the audience? Questions, comments from the board? This vote is to approve a second read. Let's vote.
that motion carried 5-0.
I'll now entertain a motion to read this for its, oh, she has to read it.
Your Honor, this is the final reading of Bill number 6094, an ordinance to approve the addendum with Empire Energy LLC for fuel and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. The floor is open for a motion to approve the final reading of Bill number 6094.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments from anybody in the audience? Comments from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
That motion carried 5-0. Your Honor, the next item is the first reading of Bill Number 6095, an ordinance approving renewal of signed lease between the City of Branson and A&B Property LLC and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill Number 6095.
We have a motion and a second, and we'll get a staff report from Keith.
Mayor, members of the board, this is for a signed lease for the Acres and Arnie building up there. Their billboard out front of the building. There's approximately 76 square feet of land there, and they pay us $2.90 a square foot for this signed lease. And this is the third of the 5-year renewal for this sign. Staff recommends approval. We're glad to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from the audience? Any questions from the board on this? Hearing none, let's vote.
That motion carried 5-0. Your Honor, the next item is the first reading of Bill Number 6096, an ordinance accepting the proposal of Lytle Enterprises of Ohio LLC for sign-making supplies and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill Number 6096.
We have a motion and a second. Any staff report from Keith.
Mayor, members of the board, this is for part of our sign-making materials. This is for delineators, traffic cones, barricades, blanks, signposts, sign blanks, printed signs, and such as. This is in the amount for $23,552.75. Staff recommends approval and be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions from members in the audience? Any questions from the board?
Do they make the placky thing that we're having trouble getting with tonight? Or?
Probably could, but it'd be very expensive for that.
Any additional questions from members of the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
That motion carried 5-0. Your Honor, the next item is the first reading of Bill Number 6097, an ordinance accepting the proposal of Empire Energy LLC for unleaded and diesel number 2 fuel and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill Number 6097.
We have a motion and a second, and staff report from Keith.
This is for our fuel for next year, 2022, for diesel and unleaded. This contract's in the amount for $350,000, and staff recommends approval and be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions from members of the audience? Any questions from the board?
Yes, sir, just real quick, are we locking in any prices with this at all? I
They
mean,
won't
we're
lock them
just
in.
buy as needed?
We usually get 1 to 2 deliveries a week sometimes. Just depends on our usage and everything.
You can't prepay, is that Yeah.
No.
So it's roughly the same amount as this year?
After we amend the contract, it'll be pretty close, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Hopefully gas will stabilize and won't keep going up on us. Don't have a crystal ball there.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
That motion carried 5-0. Your Honor, the next item is the first reading of Bill Number 6098, an ordinance accepting the proposal of Vulcan Incorporated for sign-making supplies and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill Number 6098.
We have a motion and a second. We'll get a staff report from Keith.
Mayor, members of the board, this is for an additional contracts for sign-making materials. Usually we get numerous sign companies that will bid on our sign materials. Some will bid posts, some will bid bases, some will bid blades, just different items. So we try to go through and decide which ones are the cheaper, and we normally do separate contracts for these different companies. This one is in the amount of $20,721.04. Staff recommends approval and be glad to answer any questions.
Is there any questions from members of the audience? Any questions from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
That motion carried 5-0. Your Honor, the next item is the first reading Bill Number 6099, an ordinance accepting the proposal of Table Rock Asphalt Construction Company Incorporated for the purchase of base rock and asphalt mix and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Floor is open for a motion approving the first reading of Bill Number 6099.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions from members of the audience? After we get a staff report, we'll ask for questions. Staff report from Keith.
Mayor, members of the board, this is for our asphalt and rock contract for next year. We had 2 bids, Capital Materials and Track, Table Rock Asphalt Company. Capital did not give us any bids for a delivered material, and due to the distance of it, when we do small patches around town, we get small amounts of asphalt. It's impossible to keep it hot enough for the hot mix traveling that distance, so we had to go with Table Rock Asphalt just for the closeness of it, proximity of it, to go get a small amount, 1 or 2 ton at a time. Because traveling long distance, it'd be hard time it got here and you couldn't work it. So staff recommends approval for this and be glad to answer any questions. And this is in the amount of $70,000.
Thank you, Keith. Is there any questions from the members of the audience? Any questions from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
Your Honor, that passed 5-0.
Last one, Keith.
Your Honor, the next item is first reading on Bill Number 6100, an ordinance accepting the proposal of Specialty Air Conditioning Services Incorporated for HVAC maintenance and repair services of the city buildings and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill Number 6100.
We have a motion and a second. A staff report from Keith.
This is for our annual HVAC maintenance. We had 2 bids, Roller Mechanical and Specialty Air. If you look at the regular hours, their hourly rate, one was $5 difference. Roller Mechanical was $5 less an hour, and their after hours was also a little less. And their markup was a little less. But the big ticket item is our semi-annual preventive maintenance portion of the contract. And so that's what we had to base our low bid on, since we do try to call them in as minimal amount as possible, when we have to have them worked on. But this is in the amount of not to exceed $70,000. Staff recommends approval to Specialty Air, and we're glad to answer any questions.
Any questions from members of the audience? Questions from the board?
What's the preventative maintenance, Keith? Is it like once every 6 months, quarterly? How's that?
It's twice a year, if I remember right.
Okay.
Is that correct, Cheryl? Yeah.
Any additional questions from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
Hopefully that was quick enough. Hopefully that was quick enough.
Good job, Keith.
Thank you.
That
Thank you,
motion
Keith.
carried 5-0. Your Honor, the next item is first reading of Bill Number 6101, an ordinance amending Chapter 18, Buildings and Building Regulations and Appendix A fee schedule of the Branson Municipal Code pertaining to code review. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill Number 6101.
We have a motion.
We have a waiting.
Can I have a verbal second, please?
Second.
Thank you.
We have a motion and a second, and we'll get a staff report from Joel.
Mayor, members of the board, at your all's request, staff has been actively going through the code book, trying to look for opportunities to reduce the amount of code. Cindy led off the effort a couple weeks ago, and now Plan and Development is here to take up round 2. So the chapters within the code book that department is responsible for are chapters 18, which is the building codes, chapter 38, which deals with floodplain regulations, and chapter 94, the zoning code. So quite simply, chapter 38, we're not recommending any changes because it's basically an entire set of codes that we need to have in place for the National Flood Insurance Program in order to have good standing, so not much we can do there. Chapter 94, an extensive effort, was just completed back in 2019. We've done some smaller updates since, just minor cleanups, so we're in good shape from that standpoint. So that leaves us with chapter 18. The majority of that chapter are the ICC codes along with the local amendments. However, in Article 1, we did identify a couple things that could be removed, so I'll quickly go through those. There were some definitions that were duplicated. We can obviously remove those. There were fees listed. However, when the clerk did their overhaul a couple years ago, what they did was push all those fees into our Appendix A, and what that does is prevent any contradictions if fees are changed at some point, to make sure you're not having to delete them out of two places. So we're cleaning that up. Also, we saw an opportunity to replace design professional verbiage with applicant, just to give more flexibility to who can actually make a request to the city for a building permit. We also removed some references, or are proposing to remove some references. We don't require on-site plans anymore. We don't have jobs inspection cards anymore, so no need to have that codified. And then finally, just providing clarity on how the technology fee is applied, because there are two different rates, and so we wanted to make sure it was very clear how those rates were applicable. As a result, staff recommends approval, and definitely happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for doing this.
Very welcome.
Is there any questions from members of the audience? Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, let's vote. Thank you, Joel.
Thank you.
That motion carried 5-0. Your Honor, the next item is the first reading of Bill Number 6102, an ordinance approving the addendum contract with Radio Phone Engineering Incorporated for Moswin radio equipment updates and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill Number 6102.
We have a motion and a second. We'll get a staff report from Chief Matthews.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. Tonight, we're asking for an addendum to an existing radio phone contract. You may remember back in November of last year, you approved a contract with Radio Phone so that they could handle all of our radio needs. Earlier this year in May, you approved a budget amendment to allow Radio Phone to come in and install equipment for Moswin. This addendum to the contract just makes that contract not to exceed $40,000. The original was $15,000. The budget amendment was $25,000. So the contract now is not to exceed $40,000, and we request your approval.
Are there any questions from members of the audience? Any questions from the board?
Just a real quick one, Chief, the not to exceed was 25 and now it's 40?
No, sir, the budget amendment that was approved back in May was 25, not to exceed 25. So the total radio phone contract, the 15 original, 25, not to exceed 40.
Thank you, Ben.
Chief, is this an annual amount?
No, sir, this is a one-time
One-time.
install to get us on the state radio system.
Any other questions from members of the board? Hearing none, let's vote. Thanks, Chief.
That motion carried 5-0.
Well, here comes another chief.
Your Honor, the next time is the first reading of Bill Number 6103, an ordinance approving the addendum with Mercy Corporate Health for an amendment to the 2021 contract for firefighter physicals and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill Number 6103.
distracted. We have a motion and a second, and we'll get a staff report from Chief Ted Martin.
Evening, Mayor, members of the board. The fire department annually provides National Fire Protection Association, or NFPA, compliant occupational physicals to all fire department employees. These physicals provide baseline and historical data for vision, hearing, pulmonary function, cardiac, EKG, chest x-rays, and blood work. This contract has historically been under the $15,000 amount, requiring Board of Aldermen approval. This amount has been sustained due to partial funding by the Cheney County Local Emergency Planning Commission, or LEPC. However, due to funding shortages this year, most likely caused by the COVID pandemic, these funds to support the project could not be approved this fiscal year. Subsequently, the final invoicing to complete the physicals exceeded the original contract not to exceed amount of $14,500. Therefore, we are seeking Board of Aldermen approval, or to approve the amendment, to not exceed $18,000. The fire department has identified funding within the 2021 operational budget to cover the financial impact of this contract amendment, and we recommend approval.
Are there any questions from members of the board? Members of the audience? Any questions from the board?
Just
Hearing.
real quick.
Go ahead, Bill.
The reason for the increase because the county didn't kick in?
Correct. There's what's called the Local Emergency and Planning Commission, which is supported by industry. People that have hazardous materials such as the city of Branson with the chlorine, whitewater, the petroleum companies. Those numbers were down substantially in 2020, causing into 2021.
Thank you, Chief.
Any other questions from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
That motion carried 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ted.
Your Honor, the next item is first reading Bill number 6104, an ordinance approving the intergovernmental agreement with Cheney County and City of Branson for a time extension amendment regarding funding of the city's planned 2021 sewer system improvements projects, Country Bluff, and authorize the mayor to execute the contract. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill number 6104.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments from anybody in the audience?
The staff report.
Staff report, Mayor.
You'll be asked questions after the staff report. We'll get a staff report from Kendall.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. I have brought before you tonight a time extension for the Country Bluff Sewer Main Funding Agreement with the Cheney County Commission to extend the expiration date from December 31st of 2021 to May 31st of 2022. The project was placed on hold due to easement discussions for a portion of the sewer extension. We will proceed with this project, completing roughly 2/3 of the sewer extension. The existing 6-inch Country Bluff sewer main will be replaced at a later date once an easement is obtained. Staff recommends approval.
Now that you've heard the staff report, are there any questions from members of the audience? Please state your name and address.
My name is Cherry Webster. I live at 118 Country Bluff Drive. I live in the Country Bluff subdivision. First off, I would like to thank whoever wrote this agenda item and the staff report for adding the descriptive, meaningful words Country Bluff to the title and the text. This made it readily visible and helpful to people like me who need to know what agenda items to look into more closely. This sewer project is the result of a June 2020 resolution for infrastructure cost share for the property located at 3855 Fall Creek Road, originally known as Fountains on Fall Creek, which adjoins Country Bluff Estates. The staff report notes, quote, the unforeseen circumstance of retaining an easement to complete the sewer main upgrade. It also notes the city thus needing, quote, to pursue a waiver from the Missouri DNR to proceed with a revised plan. This information is correct, but it gives an incomplete picture, and I'd like to fill in some blanks. The reason the city was unable to obtain a temporary construction easement was because the developer, Dan Ruda, has repeatedly refused to construct the sediment filter basin that his engineer designed March 15th, 2020. At the October 27th, 2020 Board of Aldermen meeting, the developer said he would put in the basin when he got his MHDC award before the end of the year, only he didn't receive any MHDC funding in December of 2020. His score was too low. He also refused to construct the basin in March 2021, when Alderman Julia King, at my request before the elections, asked him if he would put in the basin. His response to her was, "I will be in compliance with the DNR." Then in July 2021, Mr. Ruda told our Country Bluff POA president that the 100 Country Bluff homeowners should each put up $750 for a total of $75,000, and then he would construct the basin. As a note, after the completion of the land disturbance process in early 2020, this filter basin would have become the stormwater detention pond, protecting the neighborhood from flooding. Most recently, in the last couple of months, the landowners were informed by the city administrator that the property owner that needed to grant the easement was willing to do so, but only after Ruda constructed the detention pond, so that her driveway would not be completely inundated again with stormwater, so that her next-door neighbor's side and rear yards would not be eroded of vegetation, nor would his house be in jeopardy of flooding, and so that lots 35 and 34 within Country Bluff would no longer be used as a larger parcel's detention pond. Do you see a pattern here? The developer and his engineer recognize the need for the basin, as do the city and county guidelines that require detention when more than 10 acres are cleared. But Mr. Ruda refuses to pay for it himself. And the neighborhood is bearing the brunt of that refusal in the form of flooding. As for the waiver with the DNR, the city was left with the decision of what to do with the $85,000 from the county sewer district without the easement. So a revision allowing limited sewer capacity was designed. This would also allow the city to fulfill its obligation to, quote, provide sewer within the 3-year time frame for annexed properties as defined in city code. Are the aforementioned issues resolved? Well, there's no easement. There's a limited capacity sewer design that may accommodate the original low-income housing project of 40 units, but that design will definitely not handle the development of the full 52-acre parcel, nor the adjoining upstream properties, which would be the 25-acre Nevins property and then the Woodlands subdivision. This past May 25th, at the second reading of the annual initial approval for the $85,000 sewer district funding, Alderman Denham and Cooper voted no. I would hope tonight they vote again no, and instead recommend a better use of the county sewer district funds for perhaps existing failing sewer systems instead of adding value to a private developer's parcel that he's apparently now trying to unload. Also at that May 25th Alderman hearing, I asked the board to postpone the second reading until the MHDC made its award announcements in mid-December because the developer had no construction financing. Well, guess what? The landowner won't be receiving any MHDC funding again this year because he didn't even apply for funding for this site. In fact, what we have seen is his attempt to sell the property. A week before the second reading last May, Mr. Ruda formally relisted this parcel online at his new higher price because now the property has been cleared and, quote, utilities are available, at least according to his online description. Then just last month and early this month, the developer mowed the front of the parcel from the pavement to about 20 feet behind the log fence, which hadn't been done in about 2 years. He also added 2 new for sale signs on either side of the double gates. We understand that the utilities director wants to proceed with the sewer line extension towards the ultimate goal of removing from service 2 lift stations within the Woodlands subdivision. But this revised extension will only provide 200 feet of an 8-inch line within the Country Bluff subdivision, to which no one in Country Bluff will be connecting. This 8-inch line will connect to a 6-inch line for approximately 130 feet, then connect to another 8-inch line which continues onto the Country Bluff lift station. So the bottom line is there's no construction funding for the developer's site, not even an MHDC application for funding. The county is not adding the turn lanes on Fall Creek Road until there is construction funding. The county and the city are not extending the water line at this time. The county is insisting that developer bore under Fall Creek Road for the water extension, which will require a bond of approximately $56,000. The developer is actively trying to sell the parcel, and lots 35 and 34 are still being used as the developer's detention pond. Why not just let this contract expire and stop rewarding this developer? The city can reapply when there is construction funding by either the current landowner or its new owner. If the owner isn't going to build anything and after 2 years has yet to provide to the city a plan for the entire 52 acres, why put up money to provide sewer now? There's still another 1.5 years to go before the 3-year limit kicks in to provide sewer. In the past, the current landowner has even threatened the possibility of de-annexing the parcel and developing it in the county. Let him. Country Bluff would ask the board members tonight to vote no on this time extension. And before Alderman Skanes asks if the developer would like to make his comments in rebuttal, are there any questions the other aldermen might ask of me?
I think that's my department to ask that question. Are there any questions the board would like to ask Jerry?
I just wanted to make one clarification. Cherry, you stated to provide sewer within 3 years, services within 3 years on an annexation. That's for involuntary annexation. 3 years is not required for voluntary annexation.
Thank you. I didn't know that. Well, then why bother to put it up at all now? Just let it expire.
Are there any other questions on the board for Cherry? Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you.
Anybody else in the audience wishing to speak to this matter? Hearing none, is there any board members want to have questions or comments?
Kendall, can you kind of review the other benefits of this? I mean, it's not just for that particular land. It helps with lift stations and stuff throughout that line, doesn't it?
Yeah, correct. Our goal is to look in the future for our sewer needs for the whole community, and not just inside the city limits, but also outside the city limits when we're a regional-based system. So the thought process is to look ahead and look for opportunities for funding. The county had a little bit of funding available this year, so they had offered up the $85,000 to put towards this project, and so we went with that, and in hopes that we could extend the sewer one step farther to help us in the future goal of taking those lift stations offline. This is one part of the whole scenario. We would also have to do upgrades to our existing lift station in Country Bluff, lift station 40. So we understand through our hydraulic study that the lift station pumps need to be upsized and possibly force main changes or equalization basin created to accommodate for the additional flows. But we have done the study, and we're working through that process right now to identify exactly what the needs will be in the future for that lift station. But again, this is just one part of the whole grand scheme of things.
Kendall, I recall somewhere in the last couple months, you did a presentation about $40 million, roughly, give or take, worth of sewer upgrades that need to occur just to the overall system.
Actually, that would be water upgrades.
I'm sorry,
yeah.
water upgrades. But does this, what we approved back in May, I think it was, does this, is Cherry right, does this benefit Country Bluff at all, or is it just for the future of that sewer project along Fall Creek?
It'd be the future of the neighboring parcels up through there. Now, again, we wanted to correct the 6-inch sewer main that's existing within Country Bluff, which would benefit them in the fact of it corrects the slope of that line. It's actually undersloped or undersized at this point. And it would correct that. And also, again, having that as a larger 8-inch line would help prevent, any kind of sanitary sewer overflows in the future, which again, we have to regulate that connections to that line, so.
So you're saying this would help the residents there with their flow and pressure?
Well, what it does is it corrects a long-standing issue we've had with that 6-inch sewer main. So when you have a minimum slope, you tend to have the solids tend to settle out and the water outruns the solids, so.
I have a question, Mayor. Kendall, can you share the reason why an easement hasn't been procured yet?
Yeah, certainly. So I actually spoke with the nephew of the property owner. He's the power of attorney, and very nice gentleman. We had a great conversation, very open to an easement, but he was hesitant because he wants the drainage issues to be resolved first. He said he'll give us an easement once the drainage issues are resolved.
Also, have there been previous extensions? I mean, is this normal procedure, or have there been previous extensions for these type of contracts?
Can you define contracts?
The contract with the county, that requesting, receiving the funding, but needing to get an extension.
Oh, yes. We've had to request extensions in the past. We try not to do them too often because, again, we like to be good stewards of the money that's been available to us. But we've had some situations for, say, it was one of the projects was a Cooper Creek intermediate upgrades. So the county had actually give us $1 million for that project. And that project took several months and extended over into the next year. So we had to ask for an extension to be able to utilize those funds the next year. And then we've had other projects, smaller projects like lift station upgrades and all that have similar situations where the contracts, by the time we finish engineering and go out to bid for contracts, the timing of it all extends over to the next year, and then we've had to request.
Okay, so it's construction, for construction reasons?
Yes, correct.
And also, have there ever been times when maybe a project that the city was awarded funding for, it just was a project that couldn't be done, and then a request was made to maybe use those funds on something that was of a bigger necessity?
So not to my knowledge. All the items that we've requested funding for have been pushed through the process and accomplished.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, just one question, because I'm trying to understand where this easement is, going out Fall Creek Road and the turn into Country Bluff. Is the easement on the back end or on the front end, the frontage of Fall Creek Road?
Okay, so the easement's actually in in Country Bluff Estates itself. Get my directions correct, it'd be the east side of Country Bluff Drive. So as you're coming into the subdivision, you're going south, and then on the east side is the existing property where the 6-inch main is located. It's roughly 128 feet of sewer main. We found out through our survey work that the sewer main is actually not center of the easement, of the existing easement. It actually runs right along the edge of the easement. So we knew after the survey that we would need a temporary construction easement to allow us access to that sewer main, as well as requesting a larger permanent easement, or correcting the center line of that sewer line to be in the center of the existing easement.
So for the easement, the hold on the easement of it not being signed, doesn't want to sign it until the flooding's taken care of, and this has been an ongoing thing, so what makes us feel that the flooding's going to be taken care of?
I'm not aware of when that'll be taken care of.
And so he won't sign the easement?
Correct, yeah, he said he would not sign the easement until the flooding situation would be taken care of.
Okay, I'm just going to voice my concerns. I have a few reasons to be concerned. This request is for something to be located on an undeveloped piece of property to serve an undetermined project that is now being sold by the developer. Property has been destroyed for an entire subdivision, and there's only going to be really one person that's going to greatly benefit, and that's the developer, and I don't feel that those are good reasons to spend taxpayer dollars on. So I just wanted to comment on that. Thank you.
Fair enough.
Kendall,
Sorry.
I had a question. So the easement that's required to put this in, that property owner won't sign an easement unless the stormwater issue is resolved.
Yes.
So how do we get there from here?
Again, that'd be a discussion between the landowner, or the development anyway, and the Country Bluff Estates. I don't know how else to, as far as from my perspective anyway, as a utility, I don't know how I could, persuade somebody to work together as neighboring property owners to come to a resolution. I know this has been discussed several times in several meetings, and it's not gotten anywhere, not gained any traction. From me, my perspective, I'm approaching it as a water sewer utility that's looking out for the interest of the city of Branson, and I think you guys know as well as I do, when money's come available, we want to take advantage of them as much as possible. Not to say that we couldn't potentially gain back this money later on down the road, but if we don't extend this, the money goes back to the county. The county would then choose to allocate it towards another project. It won't come back to the city. So that's something that I want to hold on to and use for our benefit. And really the county sees it as a benefit for them as well, because it could in the future benefit other properties that are currently in the county, as well as the Woodland subdivision, which is in the county itself, but we serve sewer too. So they're not annexed, but our tourism tax dollars, we have that fortunately. It's still not enough to take care of our needs, and so this is just one avenue that helps us proceed our goals of providing a sewer system for the whole area.
Okay, so for clarity, what you're really doing, you're asking for an extension of time because Cheney County, their agreement was to fund this the next period of time. So you're asking for a vote to approve the extension of time, knowing that we still have the obstacle of getting an easement to be able to put this in.
Yes, we still have that obstacle, but my recommendation would be to proceed forward with the, as Ms. Webster had mentioned, the 200 feet of sewer main. Go ahead and construct that in hopes that something will be resolved. Again, you guys have opted to, I think, bring it to the board as an agenda item, but hopefully something will be resolved and the timing will hit right. Maybe we can do the whole project. But.
Okay. Any other questions?
One more for Kendall. Did we submit any other applications? Because the county is going to award the funds. I mean, say this didn't go through, the county will award the funds. Did the city of Branson submit any other applications?
So for, back in September of this year, we had to have our application submitted to the county. for the 2022 request. So I actually went all out and I requested over $1.5 million worth of funding. Historically, we do not receive that. But again, I'm trying to get everything that we can for our sewer system. And so we'll know more about that towards the end of the year once the county commissions have their meetings.
Okay, so there's a possibility that if this didn't go through, the city could still get some funding for another application. That money could go towards that?
No, those monies are actually, it's project specific. So we have to request for specific projects. And so the way they divvy out that money is they look at the projects based on priority. So if, for example, Rockaway Beach had a failing wastewater treatment system, so they made them a priority one year because they needed to get that facility back up and going. So they actually assess all the requests and the need for the request, and they prioritize them similar to our priority-based budgeting process.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
That motion carried 4-1 with Alderman Denham voting no.
Interrupt real quick. We have some Boy Scouts in the audience. Is there something that, are you wanting the Board of Aldermen to break out into a song? I am a Boy Scout.
Please don't.
Did you know that a scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, and reverent?
That's it. How many in here have been Boy Scout before?
Very nice. So you're here just observing. Nice, nice. Well, welcome.
Your Honor, the next item is the first reading of Bill Number 6105, an ordinance approving the renewal of the contracts with Missouri American Water Company for water usage data and water termination, authorizing the mayor to execute the contracts. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill Number 6105.
Are we struggling with the motion and second? You want
Yeah,
to do a verbal?
yes, it's just.
So move.
It's just spinning.
Second.
Alderman Skanes moved and Alderman Fenton seconded. We'll now get a staff report from Kendall.
Mayor, members of the board, I have before you renewal contracts for water usage data and water termination services for non-payment of monthly sewer billings with the Missouri American Water Company. The original contract began in 2013, making this our 10th year working with Missouri American. In the first contract, Missouri American agrees to assemble and supply the water usage data during the fiscal year of 2022. Staff recommends the renewal of the contract with Missouri American Water for the water usage data in the amount of $3,000. In the second contract, Missouri American agrees to terminate water service when we identify customers for non-payment of sewer billings. Staff recommends the renewal of the contract with Missouri American Water for water termination services in the amount not to exceed $28,000. These costs are transferred to the customer responsible for the non-payment for their bill. Funds have been appropriated in the utility 2022 operational budget to accommodate for these two contract renewals. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from members of the audience? Are there questions from the board? I have a question for Chris. Chris, I'm assuming this is a separate agreement from Water District Number 3?
Correct. Kendall and I actually just talked about that one when was it, this afternoon, Kendall?
This morning, yeah.
Yeah, you're going to probably see that one January, February of next year. We're real close to getting that one done, but this is with a private entity on is it the other side of the city, basically?
It'll be south side of the city.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, but this will be similar, same to the other, okay. Any other questions from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
That motion carried 5-0. Your Honor, the next item is first reading, Bill Number 6106, an ordinance approving the annual utilities contracts for maintenance and laboratory services and authorizing the mayor to execute the contracts. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading, Bill Number 6106.
We have a motion and a second, and we'll get a staff report from Kendall, please.
Mayor and members of the board, can't talk tonight. I have before you, I have before you two contracts. The first is for generator maintenance. Two bids were received on September 30th of 2021 for scheduled maintenance and necessary repair of 22 backup emergency generators and 2 backup emergency pumps, which are located at city sewer lift stations and treatment facilities. This also includes 7 generators for the city fire department. Funds are budgeted in the proposed 2022 operational budget. Staff recommends approval of the contract with Central Power in the amount not to exceed $35,400 for the 2022 contract period. The second contract is for laboratory services. One bid was received on October 19, 2021 from PDC Laboratories for analysis of required samples taken to monitor compliance of the city's wastewater treatment plant effluents, samples taken from septic tank waste delivered to the wastewater facilities for treatment, and lake samples for monitoring conditions of Lake Taneycomo. Funds are budgeted in the proposed 2022 operational budget. Staff recommends approval of the contract for PDC Laboratories in an amount not to exceed $28,000 for the 2022 contract period. Staff recommends approval and happy to answer any questions.
You've heard 2 contracts under one ordinance. Are there any questions from members of the audience? Any questions, comments from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
That motion carried 5-0.
Thank you.
Kendall.
Your Honor, the next item is the first reading of Bill Number 6107, an ordinance appointing members to fill certain vacancies in the City of Branson Tax Increment Financing Commission. Floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill Number 6107.
We have a motion and a second, a staff report from Lisa Westfall.
Mayor and Board, this is a housekeeping item for the appointment to the TIF Commission. The different commissioners' appointments expire, and this is appointments made by the mayor asking for appointments to be approved. Mayor's asking Gary Groman, appointment to the City of Branson Tax Increment Finance Commission, replacing Mike Booth with a term expiring November 28, 2025, and Betsy McConnell, reappointment to the City of Branson Tax Increment Financing Commission with a term expiring November 28, 2025. Be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from members of the audience? Questions or comments from the board?
Just a real quick question. Do these have to be acted on together, or are they separate?
They're under one ordinance, so they're together.
I think in the past, our the way we've handled these when somebody hasn't been here is we've postponed it. With Alderman C out tonight, I'd at least think we should consider postponing this till the December 14th when we have the full board. I think Clay was out and we postponed, in light of that. So I think just based on how we've handled in the past, I'd like to make a motion, we postpone this to December 14th meeting.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
If I may, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
What is the members of the commission right now? Is it?
I'm sorry, I don't have all the commission here because
Yeah, there's actually,
there's
there's 6 from ours, I believe, from category 1. And then the school board has several
school
appointed.
and other taxing entities
There's 11
have.
altogether, isn't there?
Cheney County Ambulance District as well.
I don't know that they do. I think there's one group of them for that, but I'd have to look that up. Just clarify, this is a little different because the statute says it has to be by ordinance. And so this isn't like our regular appointments, and I'm not saying anything to change what your postponement, but it will take 2 readings. That doesn't change what your motion to postpone. It just does take 2 readings, so it would kick it into January for your final reading.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, time to vote.
Is this on the postponement or?
Oh, I'm sorry, we're voting to postpone this to the December 14th meeting.
That's a motion on postponement.
Motion, second, motion to postpone. Let's vote. Vote.
That motion carried 5-0.
That concludes the agenda items. We're down to the Aldermen reports. Alderman Denham?
Just want to wish everyone a wonderfully blessed Thanksgiving with your friends and family.
Alderman Skanes?
I second that, Ruth. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family, and thank these young men and their families for coming out. For those of us that were Boy Scouts, remember that. It was a lot of fun at the time, and we thank you so much for coming out.
No report, Mayor. Happy Thanksgiving.
Alderman Fenton?
Just happy Thanksgiving, and thank you to all the city staff for all you do. Appreciate you.
Alderman Whitus?
Now, these young scouts working on your communication, do you have any communication that you'd like to give us at this time? Happy Thanksgiving back at you. All right. Yes, happy Thanksgiving to all. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say, don't forget to shop local after Thanksgiving. Thank you.
This message brought to you by Tanger.
Administrator Dobbins?
Just to say happy Thanksgiving to all staff, to their families, to the folks that are here tonight, and to you all. You all are wonderful people, and I know you go through a lot, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dan. I'm going to take just a moment and read a letter that I received just today. It's from the Branson Veterans of America 913. It said, "Dear Mayor Milton, we would like to express our appreciation for the incredible support we received for the conduct of the Veterans Day Parade on November 11th. We had one of the best parades we have had in a number of years due to a large part to the support, coordination, and general assistance from several Branson municipal departments. The Branson Police Department was a key player by not only providing safety and security for our parade, but also the coordination with the organization as well as other municipal departments. In addition, they provided immense support during the parade to assure all entrants maintained spacing and that pedestrians were kept safe. To that end, the drone operation was absolutely essential. Another major player was the Department of Public Works. Their response and support was equally as dynamic as that of the police department, providing proper barricades essential to maintaining limited access to the roadways that consisted of the parade route. Along with the Department of Public Works was the Branson Fire Department. Not only did they provide some barriers to mitigate vehicle conflict on the parade route, but they stood by the entire time of the parade to respond to emergency needs. Further, we want to mention TCAD. They too were standing by to respond if needed. In fact, we did have one incident that could have required their assistance, but as it turned out, it did not. We can't say enough about how impressive and essential each group was to the success of the parade and the safety of likely thousands who viewed the parade. The combined efforts result in a great honor to our veterans. We would have only one suggestion. It would be good if the city could upgrade the drone to a more commercial unit rather than rely on a hobby unit, though very good. The drone was essential to assuring the safety and well-being of the parade participants and the viewers. Again, thank you to all who provided support. We would ask that this letter be read to the City Council to let them know how well the City of Branson responded to this very important event. Signed, Richard Burkhalter. So I just wanted to read that.
Fantastic.
It really says a lot about how our entire city operates and how important every department is. I was honored to be in the parade. I thought the parade went well, but I only had it from my view. Hearing nothing else, motion to adjourn. I will accept a motion to adjourn. If I don't hear one, I'll make it myself.
So move.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Ayes have it.